Grip socks are great, and now they're even better with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Better fit, moisture wicking, amazing comfort, and all the extra grip you need. Choose from 10 different colors for just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
Something Nike is doing extremely well at the moment is indoor and turf boots, these being no exception. Ladies and gentlemen, the Nike Zoom Mercurial Vapor 14 Pro that I have here with the turf outsole, although they do also make it with an indoor bottom that you can pick depending on the playing surface you'll be using them on. It features a bespoke Flyknit upper that you're only going to find on the Vapor 14 Pro with the flat bottom. And unlike the FG version of the Vapor 14 Pro, it retails for $120 rather than $140. So not only are these really good value for money, it's a purpose-built design. They haven't just taken the upper from the FG model and slapped it on a generic indoor or turf bottom. This was designed as an indoor and turf boot first, and I think what they've done with this upper is really interesting, something that I'd actually like to see them roll out on future models. If you want to learn all about what these have on offer, please stick around, watch the entire review. We'll go over everything, including how they fit and feel on feet. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, either in the turf or indoor variation, although the turf model does seem to be more readily available for whatever reason, you can check out the link down below in the description. That's going to take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $120 retail price. As always, if you guys do end up enjoying the content and want to see more indoor and turf reviews on the channel, please don't forget to support this one with a like. And if you are new here watching for the first time and aren't already subscribed to the channel, it'd mean the world to me if you could hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you don't miss out on the next new video. So first things first, and I think this is something that a lot of people don't really consider when buying indoor and turf models, this being a Mercurial Vapor, it has the general shape of a Mercurial Vapor. I think what is often lost when transitioning from an FG boot with a solid plastic sole plate to an indoor boot with a foam-based midsole is you lose out on the shape and the general feel of the real thing, the FG model, if you will. And I think while this doesn't feel quite like a Vapor 14 Pro or Elite for that matter, because the upper is quite a bit different, the general shape and the way that the boot wraps your foot I think is very Mercurial-esque. So if you're looking for that familiarity from an indoor or turf option, if you're a Mercurial fan, you're getting it here from this variation of the Vapor 14 Pro. The upper, however, is very interesting because if you look up close, it has this kind of rubber grid pattern scattered across the upper with some overlays of Nike skin, or basically just thin polyurethane, as kind of a reinforcement element. But what this actually is what, according to Nike, is a minimalist Flyknit upper, where they've stripped away everything that's unnecessary and just left the elements that make for the most minimalist upper possible, which is kind of what the Mercurial series is all about. Now, as far as touch on the ball is concerned, I can't say that these feel quite as thin as what you're gonna find from the regular Vapor 14 Pro, and certainly the Vaporposit upper found on the Vapor 14 Elite. But what is here feels quite good. You can see up close, it has a very thin, fairly simple Flyknit base, and then over top, that rubber grid pattern that does get a little bit more dense through the forefoot and toe box area. You can see it kind of spaces out a little bit through the forefoot where you would normally have kind of this reinforcement element, and then you can see it's wider grid as you get through the midfoot on both the lateral and medial side. It must also be said that there is actually a lining material on the inside as well, so it's not just straight up Flyknit, but the end result is material that feels extremely soft and sock-like on your feet. There is no break-in time required with this upper whatsoever, and the touch on the ball is quite thin, but because of this rubber grid you have across the top of the foot, it actually does allow for a lot of additional grip on the ball that you otherwise would not have with a pair of Mercurial. So I guess that does make this distinctively different from a touch perspective. If you don't like having a lot of extra grip, this might not be the best option for you. But from my perspective, based on what I like, the extra grip I think was very much appreciated, and I loved the sock-like sensation and very natural feel of this upper because it just moves so nicely with your foot. What is kind of interesting, being that this is a Flyknit upper, is what they've done through the middle of the foot. It is still a one-piece upper construction, but you can see they've gone for a much cheaper elasticated material rather than making that out of the more premium Flyknit, which could also be elasticated like we see on the top-end Vapor 14 Elite. Nonetheless, this still feels fine. It does the job. Once the boots are on your feet, it's not a big deal. It just doesn't stretch as much as I would like it to, which does make putting these on and taking them off a little bit more difficult than it perhaps needs to be. Laces run directly down the middle, as they do on pretty much every pair of Mercurials, and being that this is a Vapor 14, it does feature a low-cut design, and it must be said that they do not make this in a Superfly variation. If you want this boot, you have to get it in low-cut form. At the rear, you're going to find an internal plastic heel counter, and for those that will ask about this Volt yellow element that runs across the back of the heel, it's purely there for the sake of aesthetics, and I must say, I think it looks quite cool. Internally, the heel liner is this really soft synthetic material that grips your socks very nicely. Plenty of extra padding as well, something that I really liked about this boot. And the insole is fully removable. I'll give you guys a quick look at that. It features a standard mesh liner on the surface, your Mercurial branding on the heel, and it's made from a single layer of this very ortholite style foam. It's a little bit thicker than what you'd find on an FG Mercurial and does provide some nice underfoot cushion. As a midsole, you're going to find a combination of foam as well as Nike Zoom Air technology. You can actually see a little window right here on the bottom of the heel, and if you remove the insole on the inside, you can see they actually put a couple perforations so you can see the actual zoom unit underneath your heel, something I very much appreciate, because if you can't see it at all, it's always easy to just question whether or not it's there, because I wouldn't say it's the most noticeable thing in terms of overall feel. Zoom Air is something that Nike uses in a lot of their footwear outside of football boots, and I think on this it's a very subtle implementation that I appreciate, but I don't think it makes for a gigantic impact on the overall underfoot cushioning. Although I can't try the boots without it, so I can't say how much of an impact it has. Nonetheless, the foam itself, it's not specified on Nike's website, so I'm not sure if it's a Phylon or something else. Phylon is just my general assumption. And you can see it's got some decent thickness through the heel along with that Zoom Air cushion, and then tapers out quite significantly as you get closer and closer to the toe, where you feel very close to the ground. I would say the impact protection in the heel is most significant for sure, but in general, you feel close enough to the ground to where it's not detrimental to the feel. I think a lot of people complain about indoor and turf boots feeling too much like running shoes. These feel very low profile underfoot, which I very much appreciate. They're also extremely flexible, which works very nicely with this Flyknit based upper that also has plenty of flex and give to it. As far as the outsole is concerned, you can see it has this very large rubber lip running through the forefoot and toe box area that extends up quite high. So from a durability perspective, that should hold up very nicely long term. And then as far as the turf outsole is concerned, it is extremely aggressive, made out of these rectangular shaped nubs that are scattered in all directions, pretty much across the entire bottom of your foot, which from a turf boot perspective, I've said this in videos before, I feel like they all perform pretty similarly in terms of overall traction, but this is that smidge more aggressive, and one that I really appreciate. The quality of the rubber and the pattern in general, I think is definitely above average in the realm of turf boots. When it comes to weight, these are actually lighter than I was expecting them to be based on the amount of rubber on the outsole as well as the thickness of the rubber, but the scale does not lie. In a size 9.5 US, you can see the Vapor 14 Pro Turf weighs in at 9 ounces exactly, the equivalent of 255 grams, which is obviously more than what you're going to find from the FG variation of this boot, which is different in just about every single way. But as far as turf boots go, especially high-end ones, these are actually much lighter than what you're going to find across the board, where in general, they tend to average around 10 to 10.5 ounces. So if you're looking for a light pair of turf boots, these are pretty light. On feet, to put things as simply as possible, these feel really good. If you missed the Flyknit days of the Mercurial, it's back with this Vapor 14 Pro Turf. What you're going to find with this Flyknit upper is that it really doesn't have much in the way of restriction. It's very flexible, it moves naturally with your foot, and because the outsole really doesn't have much plastic to it, it just bends really, really well, giving this boot a very natural sensation. Definitely more so than what you'd find from an FG, SG, or AG version of the Vapor 14, but I think it's very fitting for a turf boot in general, and honestly just feels great. Underfoot, the cushioning is nice through the heel, minimal through the forefoot and toe box area, but in general still feels very close to the ground, so no complaints there. And again, the boot has not lost that mercurial shape, so it still wraps your foot very closely, giving you that one-to-one sensation. Are they quite as responsive as a Vapor 14 Pro or a Vapor 14 Elite when you're talking about the Vaporposit variation of the upper? No, not quite, but they feel really good and I think come close enough to where it's not going to be an issue for most people. As far as sizing is concerned and width, I think width-wise they are tight as Mercurial should be, so they're going to be suitable for most people as long as you don't have super wide feet. Again, the material across the top of the foot as well as around the opening doesn't stretch all that well, so putting them on is a little bit more difficult than a regular pair of Mercurials, but I don't think that's a huge deal or is going to be a major problem for most people. And then when it comes to sizing, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and they fit a little bit more snug than a regular FG pair of Mercurials would. And that's simply down to the fact that this does have a little bit of a rubber lip and the volume through the toe box seems to be a little bit slimmer in general. So if you like that super tight fit, I think true to size is gonna be fine for most people. But if you want that little bit of extra space, going half a size up might not be a bad idea. So in conclusion, and I'm gonna be really straight up with you guys, if you're a fan of the Mercurial series and you wear them as FG, AG, or SG boots at the moment, and you need a pair of Mercurials for indoor or turf use, then I absolutely 100% think you should go for the Vapor 14 Pro. For $120, I'm really impressed with what you get. The fit is up to par and what you would expect from something bearing the Mercurial name. I think this Flyknit upper with the rubber grid pattern on the surface feels really good. I'd love to see this on future football boots from Nike, certainly on some FG models, maybe even the next generation of Mercurial. And I think that the outsole, at least the turf variation, is extremely aggressive and just feels really good underfoot. Given that Nike no longer makes an elite option in indoor or turf outsoles, being that this is a pro, which is kind of viewed as a takedown model, there's nothing takedown model about these. For 120 bucks, you are getting top end quality, and that is something that we don't often see from Nike. I'm really impressed with these.